Hello all, today we will be dealing with the poem Blackout, which was written by Pakistani writer Faiz Ahmed Faiz. Blackout is a poem which deals with the theme of war, the fear, anxiety and pain of people who are victims of war because they are forced to go through these dangers. Though the poem is very short, its themes are of vast and wider significance. In this lyrical poem, Faiz constantly raises questions of home and exile that defy the space of separation of the two nation-states, India and Pakistan. So telling about the poet Faiz Ahmed Faiz, he is a Pakistani writer. He wrote in Urdu and Punjabi languages. He served as a teacher, army officer, journalist, trade unionist and broadcaster, apart from his contributions in literature. He has won Lenin Peace Prize. He has went on to serve in the British Indian Army. After Pakistan's independence, Faiz became the editor of the Pakistan Times and was a leading member of the Communist Party before being arrested in 1951 as an allied part of conspiracy to overthrow the Liaquat administration and replace it with a left-wing government. Faiz was released after 4 years in prison and he went on to become a notable member of the progressive writers movement. And eventually an aide to the Bhutto administration before being self-exiled to Beirut. Faiz was an avowed Marxist and he received the Lenin Peace Prize by the Soviet Union in 1962. His work remains influential in Pakistan literature and arts. Faiz's literary work was posthumously publicly honored when the Pakistan government conferred upon him the nation's highest civil award, Nishan-e-Imtiaz, in 1990. Faiz Ahmed Faiz wrote poetry in Urdu language while holding strong political views all through his life that often got him into trouble with the law. He served a number of prison sentences because of his beliefs, but it never changed him. The early 1950s was the start of turbulent times for Faiz, and he was arrested in 1951 following a failed coup against the government. A death sentence was passed on to him, but having served 4 years in prison, he was released. In 1965, he was appointed by the Bhutto's Pakistani government to an honorary position working for the Department of Information during the savage India-Pakistan War. The bloodshed between the countries plus Bangladesh outraged him so much that he wrote some very powerful poems, including the one which we are dealing today, the Blackout. The outcome of the war resulted in the government being overthrown, and when Zia al-Haq took over, Faiz was exiled to Beirut in the Lebanon. He was to remain there almost until the end of his life. He kept himself busy writing poetry and editing the magazine named Lotus. He will be remembered as someone who wrote in a fairly easy, conventional style and was influenced to some degree by a 19th century poet called Ghalib who also wrote in Urdu. Political and social themes were never far from this left-wing intellectual poet's work though. Faiz Ahmed Faiz died in 1984 at the age of 73 while living in Lahore. It had not been long since his return to Pakistan from exile, and he was nominated for a Nobel Prize for Literature shortly before his death. Let us look into the background of this poem. In September 1965, India and Pakistan went to their first full-scale war. Faiz then, he was a 54-year-old and he was at Karachi, and as war raged, he penned a remarkable poem, which is this poem we are going to deal with, the Blackout. Since the poem is a reflection on 1965 Indo-Pak War, through the verses we could identify how sad was the situation in both the countries were. Even before going through the verses of this poem, just from the title we could identify what the poet had intended to say through this poem. Because blackout was a significant practice used by soldiers to prevent their enemies. Blackout is a war technique where they turn off all the lights in homes to prevent enemy from identifying any human settlement. And this happened in almost every night during Indo-Pak War. And hence the title is significant. And when the lights are turned off, the people living in their homes are forced to be in darkness. This very same idea can be seen in the first stanza of the poem. Let me read the first stanza. Since our lights were extinguished, I have been searching for a way to see. My eyes are lost, God knows where. From the first stanza of the poem, it is evident that the poet had written the poem from his own experiences. And he is referring to himself and his neighbors who are suffering the same. He is saying that our lights were extinguished, which is a reference to the practice of blackout. And here the poet does not refer to himself, but instead he used our, because he is not the only victim who is suffering. There are a lot of people who are out there in darkness. They are also forced to turn off all lights to hide their presence from the so-called enemies. And the poet is saying that he have been searching for a way to see, since lights are extinguished, and he is in darkness. And by saying, my eyes are lost, the poet intends to refer to the clouded vision of humanity. He is saying that humanity has lost its vision because everyone is fighting around, and hence darkness had spread among all. And the poet adds that only God knows where, or only God knows where what people are up to. In this first stanza, the poet is also referring to that he also had lost his physical eyesight at night, and as well he has lost the vision of humanity. He is intended to saying that the vision of humanity is clouded because he is witnessing war, and thus he is of the thought that vision of humanity is lost. And he adds to it that God is the one who knows that where he and others had lost their eyes. And here he does not mean the physical eyesight that which they have lost, but the insight which the humanity had lost. And only God knows where they lost this humanity. Now let us look into the second stanza. You who know me, tell me who I am, who is a friend and who an enemy. A murderous river has been unleashed into my veins, hatred beats in it. So, in this second stanza, we could see that the poet is unable to identify himself. The identity crisis of the poet, as well as people who face the similar situation of India and Pakistan partition, can be seen through these lines. The partition of India and Pakistan had left people choiceless and deprived of their identity. Hence, here the poet is asking someone to tell about the poet's whereabouts. because the poet is unable to recognize himself and he is seeking for an identity for himself. And this happens inside every person who are going through this partition. These people will be left with confusion that to which place they belong to. And here the poet is asking some person to tell him who is a friend and who is an enemy, because it is a time of war and no one is able to trust each other. One cannot identify or distinguish between a friend and an enemy, because it is a time where no one could distinguish between a friend and enemy from the people which they encounter during the time of war. And in the last two lines, the poet is saying that a murderous river has been unleashed into my veins, hatred beats in it. So, hatred is the theme of the day. It is the theme of days during war. And this hatred is beating inside everyone who are engaged in war, who are victims of war. And the poet is one among them. People are killing each other, hence, a lack of compassion for each other can be seen everywhere. Hence, he used the term. And now let's look into the third stanza. Be patient, a flash of lightning will come from another horizon, like the white hand of Moses, with my eyes, my lost diamonds. The third stanza portrays a hope for re-establishment of peace. The poet is addressing to the whole people who are victims of war to be patient. Faiz is asking those people to wait patiently with hope that one day all of them will be freed from this chaos. He asks them to be patiently wait for a flash of lightning or a flash of hope to come from another horizon. Another horizon means heaven. The poet is hopeful and is wanting the people to be hopeful that God will show them a flash of hope to regain their normal life, the life which they led before the war. Here Faiz is comparing this flash of lightning with this flash of hope which they are expecting to with the miracle happened to Moses. In this third stanza, Faiz is giving biblical reference from the Old Testament. He refers to Moses. Moses was once asked by the God to free all the Israelites who are leading their lives as slaves of Egyptians. They were under the harsh rule of Egyptian kingdom. So Moses was asked by God to make all those Israelites to follow Moses to attain freedom on behalf of God. But Moses had no belief in himself and he said to God that I'm just a common man and how will the people and the ruler will trust me? So the Lord asked Moses to put his hand inside his cloak, and when he put his hand into his cloak and when he took it out, it was leprous like snow. And this is referred in this poem as the white hand of Moses. And when God asked to put his hand back into the cloak, and when he put his hand back and when he took it out, it was restored like the rest of his hand. And God shows a couple of miracles to Moses just like this. Another miracle is that the staff of Moses turning into a snake. And the one which is referred in this poem is the leprous hand of Moses. And with these miracles, Moses had succeeded to make the people of Israelites believe that they don't deserve to be slaves of Egyptians and decided to free themselves from their clutches. And here in this poem, the poet is trying to say to all the people who are living under this harsh condition to be hopeful that someday a flash of hope, like the miracle which happened in the life of Moses, just like that, a miracle will come to their life also, so that they can, in some day, could live a peaceful life. So the poet is saying that this a miracle like the white hand of Moses will come to their life with my eyes. The poet began the poem with saying that he has lost his vision and in towards the end of the poem he is saying that this lost vision will be regained through some kind of miracle which can achieved through prayer. And the poet in the final lines saying that my lost diamonds. He is referring to the lost diamonds as his lost vision, his lost beautiful life. And he is ending this with a hope that someday he will achieve all those lost, better, and beautiful memories. Thank you.